Hi, welcome back. I'm the Book Guy, and today we're looking at the Cycle of Fire Trilogy by Janny Wurts. A lot of people on BookTube are talking about Janny right now. She's just finished her magnum opus, The Wars of Light and Shadow, an 11-book series that took her over 30 years to write. But if you're like me, you might find her big complex series a little intimidating and want to try something a little bit easier first. So some quick facts about Janny Wurts. She has written 20 novels now. So she's got these 3 standalone novels. Then there's the Cycle of Fire Trilogy we're talking about today. Then the famous Empire Trilogy, which she co-wrote with Raymond Feist. That's probably where many of you might know her from. And then finally there's her big series, The Wars of Light and Shadow, with 11 novels. Now, if you're wondering where to start with Janny Wurts, well, I was actually recently watching my friends over at Talking Story celebrate 3 years on BookTube. Congratulations again, guys. Now, they were having a chat where someone asked, where do you start with Janny Wurts? And Janny herself replied and said her best starting standalone is To Ride Hell's Chasm, which is pretty cool. Evidently, I've started in the wrong place, but it's fine. But that's for standalones, this is a trilogy. But on to the topic of today. Cycle of Fire is one of Janny's earliest works, published in the 80s, and it feels like it's fantasy from the 80s in that it explores a lot of the trends and subverts expectations on tropes that were very common at the time. The trilogy is quite short, each book is only between 300 and 400 pages per book, and yet the writing is extremely dense and rich.
That's good stuff.
You see, this trilogy feels like reading classic literature, like Tolstoy or Moby Dick. It's not quick, easy, and relaxing reading. This is writing that you study. You read slowly and savor it. This is advanced literature. So it's probably not going to appeal to everyone for that reason, but if that is your thing, you're in the right place today. The story takes place in a world of vast oceans, so it's a ship-faring fantasy very similar to Earthsea. There's a great war between the demons and the ancient Vaere, with powerful sorcerers wielding great magic, plus some incredibly deep and flawed characters that shape the story. Although I did have some frustrations with the trilogy, so this will be a mostly positive review today. I did find that the first book was the strongest, and then the later two were quite different and missing some of my favorite elements from the first one. But we'll talk more about that later in the video. But now let's look at the story. We'll see if this is going to be something that you might like to read. 2 great wizards once attempted to seal away the evil Marg demons, but at the height of the spell, the Fire Lord Yvain grew jealous of the raw power that the Storm Warden Eskiri was wielding. The Fire Lord turned on his ally at his most vulnerable moment, and yet the Storm Warden still was able to complete the spell and seal the demons away. Then he cursed his former friend and laid a gesh on his bloodline that compels his descendants to come to the Storm Warden's aid should ever he call. Many years later, the Storm Warden is once again in trouble. A dangerous, dark sorceress, Tethagris, has charmed her way into the heart of the king and has now accused the Storm Warden of mass murder. 3 children come forward at his hour of need. Tayen, a young girl whose life was once saved by the Storm Warden. Her brother Emien, determined to save his foolish little sister from the wizard's machinations. And Jarek, the Fire Lord's heir, who is compelled by the curse on his bloodline to travel across the world to free a man he's never met. But will these 3 complex and flawed children be able to save the Storm Warden, or will they cause his destruction? There's a surprising number of ideas in this world for 3 short novels. So for one, most of the story takes place on the ocean or on coastlines, and there are several epic journeys across treacherous seas. So all the peoples and places we encounter in Keithland have a culture based around seafaring.
People actually do that?
We have sea kingdoms and pirate lords, and everybody knows how to sail a boat from a young age. It's like riding a bike. There are a few fantasy races. On one hand are the demons, and there are several types of demons. Some are shaped like toads, others are giant creatures with powerful forms. We don't really know where the demons came from or what they want, but we do know that the Marg demons in particular are a threat to all life. That's why the Storm Warden sealed them all away for good. For good, right?
I'm gonna tell him.
Don't
Don't you dare.
But if the demons are evil, then the forces of good are led by the Vaere. Now, I think that's how it's pronounced. Vaere, like fairy. This mysterious people are mentioned from the earliest pages of the book, and apparently they're the ones who give sorcerers their powers, but no one really knows where they are or even what they are, and yet we can feel them pulling the strings behind momentous events.
Dance for me, puppets, dance!
As for magic, well, this is a wondrous, soft magic system where magic is built into the world and it gives a strong connection with nature and it's spoken into being. It's a little typical of magic in books from the 80s, but as the story progresses, more and more secrets are revealed about where the magic comes from and the high cost required to obtain it.
$5. No thank you.
One last thing, I have to be really vague here to avoid spoilers, but this world is not entirely fantasy. There is a hint of sci-fi too. And that's literally all I can say, which kind of kills me, but it's a good surprise. I really loved the sci-fi angle. Again, many books from this time period would frequently blend a little bit of fantasy and sci-fi together, like the Chronicles of Amber, The Voyage of Jill Shannara, or Dragon Riders of Pern. And sadly, nowadays, we don't really get crossover stories very often. Publishers are really adamant that fantasy should be fantasy and sci-fi should be sci-fi.
Math is math!
But the sci-fi element in these books was really intriguing and I quite loved it. My only complaint is I wanted more of it. Its presence was tantalizing, but always just out of reach. Yet it still brought a very interesting flavor to the story. In my opinion, this trilogy is a character drama. Characterization gets the main focus of the whole story. There is some very sophisticated character work in our three protagonists, Tayen, Emien, and Jarek. Because the story has the good Storm Warden and the evil Tathagrus pulling these three children in their respective direction, and there's incredible tension because we're never quite sure which way these protagonists are gonna go. Now, Tayen is a young girl, idealistic and naive. She sees the Storm Warden get arrested, and she's determined to save him all by herself if necessary, which may not be the most practical plan.
Yeah, I really didn't think this through.
Tayen firmly believes in truth and justice, yet she's headstrong and stubborn, and often makes decisions with her heart instead of her head. Her brother Emien is an older teenage boy. Emien just lost his father in a fishing accident. Ugh. So now he's determined not to lose his sister too. Yet Emien is distrustful of the Storm Warden to the point of paranoia, and he's enamored by the beauty of the Dark Sorceress. And he's dealing with the guilt and the burden of his father's death for which he feels responsible. Emien has such a well-written character arc where he has the potential for good and evil, and he's stuck with this tension between them. He's impetuous and immature and yet desperate to prove himself.
Let me prove you wrong.
And Jarek is the heir of the Fire Lord, the great betrayer. So Jarek just lives as a scholar. He has a sharp mind, but a weak and frail body. When the Gesh compels Jarek to cross the world, he becomes afraid of his own destiny. Will he become just as evil as his father? Is it possible to rise above the limitations of his frail body? And if he does find confidence and strength, will that just lead him to another dark path?
That's rough, buddy.
Now, the character tension, as I mentioned, was definitely my favorite part of the story, the uncertainty of where they were going. However, this was the biggest difference from the first book to the second and third. And avoiding spoilers here, but there is a lot less of that character uncertainty. Our characters have more or less picked a side, and I thought it was a little disappointing that that constant tension was not present to the same degree. There is definitely some character tension, but not as much. So there's a few different types of storylines in the trilogy, and we'll keep this spoiler free as always. But the first storyline we have is the evil plans of the Dark Sorceress and the demons. So two separate villains. What are their evil machinations for the world, and just what are they planning, and can it be stopped? And I really appreciated the story because the villains were very active. They weren't just sitting on their throne waiting for the heroes to come to them. They had quite a few surprises and clever stratagems.
I mean, I have so many ideas.
Second storyline is the call of magic. So some people in this world have the potential to become more than human and to become sorcerers. But the question is, will our characters have the courage to accept this call? And if so, do they have the strength required to claim that destiny? This is probably where the bulk of the story focuses its time, this quest for magic. And I really liked it overall, and I liked that it plays out differently multiple times for different characters. Yet, there's a big portion of the trilogy where one of the characters runs away from their destiny. And it's clearly a subversion of that classic hero's trope you got in the 80s all the time, where our hero rejects the call to action. It's almost like Rincewind, the cowardly wizard from Discworld. But it was also a bit of a frustrating plotline, because at no point was I convinced this would last. So it just felt like they were running away and delaying the inevitable and drawing out the story. Even though I admit it was interesting and it's a unique storyline, it could have been more convincing. Still, the third type of storyline is the epic journey. As I said, this is a big world that requires many adventurers to brave the treacherous seas and fight terrifying monsters. This is an exciting, swashbuckling adventure storyline, and it felt like classic fantasy. In fact, there's a reason why there's a guy on the ship on several of the book covers, because these plots are just integral and they in many ways the most enjoyable. The fourth and final storyline I'll highlight is just family. It's a major theme across the trilogy, and much of the plot revolves around it.
Salute me, familia.
So Tayen and Emien are brother and sister, and they are separated and yet connected in so many ways. Jarek, on the other hand, can feel the weight of his father's failure as he bears the consequences for that betrayal. It's a story about failure and redemption, about choosing our family and choosing who we are, instead of just inheriting the life that was intended for us. This is the real heart of the story, and I have no complaints. It was very well done.
Loved it!
Okay, now to address the elephant in the room. So, the biggest major feature of the story is the complex writing style. This is the trilogy's greatest strength, but it can also be quite challenging at times, and I really do think it's a matter of personal taste as to whether or not you'll like it or not. So let me give you an example of just what we're talking about here. So this is half a paragraph from the first chapter, so it's not too spoilery. Men-at-arms closed at his command, pinioning the accused shoulders with mailed fists. 3 black-robed sorcerers rose from the dais, one to shackle the offered wrists with fetters woven of enchantment. The others fashioned a net of ward spells to bind Askiri's mastery of wind, wave, and weather, and sensing security in his helplessness, the crowd roused sluggishly to anger. So that's what most of the trilogy is like. Often long sentences and a lot of less common words like pinioning and fetters. And there's often multiple commas with multiple clauses that all flow together into one very long sentence. It's obviously beautiful writing, absolutely. And it's fascinating to read, but it takes a little bit of work on the behalf of the reader.
Why me?
Now, I found there were a few pros and cons to this writing style, and you can decide for yourself if this is a deal breaker for you. So pro, it's beautiful writing. Obviously, very few people can write like this. The command of language is masterful. Every sentence is a work of art. The ebbs and flows of each paragraph was always changing like unpredictable music, and I just bow to the sheer staggering craftsmanship of these books. Another pro, the books improved my literacy. I am not even kidding here. So you see, there is this tendency in the book community to be productive with our reading. You know, we have to read a certain number of pages every day. We have to get through a certain number of books in order to feel like we're being productive. And it's not just YouTubers like me. Any of us can turn reading into work when we're trying to hit our KPIs. But these books forced me to slow down, to not read for productivity, but for comprehension. I read and reread certain passages of these books multiple times just to soak it all in. And I don't normally use a reading journal, but I kind of wish I had for this one.
I'm gonna write that in my diary.
These are the type of books that need to be studied in order to be fully appreciated. And I'm glad these books taught me and reminded me again to not always rush through books, but to get better at taking my time. Another pro of the complex writing, everything is more colorful. So the magic feels more alive with this powerful language behind it. Every action feels weightier. The heartache is so visceral, and the world feels saturated with details. Think of it like a movie from 20 years ago that actually had a decent color scheme, not all the gray and blues that we see nowadays. Beautiful writing made everything more interesting and visual. Okay, let's look at a con. First con, it's a lot of work, okay? I could not read these books to relax. On days when I wanted to relax, I had to go read something else. So if you're going to read this trilogy, you have to be prepared to really switch on your full brain and focus on this one in order to really take it all in.
Think, Woody. Think.
Another con, the story feels slower because it took longer to read. There were a few times when I was like, man, I've been reading for an hour and nothing's happened. I'm like, oh, because I've only read 15 pages, you know? But that is a consistent feeling. The story often feels long in places. And third and final con, honestly, sometimes things were just unclear. The writing could be so fancy that it made comprehension difficult, even for someone with a literature degree.
That's fancy. That's fancy.
So for example, there's one form of magic in the books that allows for seeing things across the world at long distance, so scrying. These scrying passages of seeing across the world through mind magic were always beautifully written, yes, some of the most impressive bits of writing, but it often became hard to tell exactly where we were, what was happening, or how much time had passed, etc. So there were times when I think clarity was sacrificed for the sake of poetry.
No sacrifice, no victory.
Now that said, I have only read the first book in the Wars of Light and Shadow, which is Janny's later work, and while the writing style there was still poetic, I don't feel like I struggled with clarity at any point. So I believe that's a skill that Janny refined further into her career, but I will have to continue to read her works to tell for sure. So one last major thing I need to flag today, there is a pretty significant difference between book 1 and books 2 and 3. So for one, they were published several years apart. One was published in 1984, the other two were published in 1988. And I almost think of them as a standalone and then a duology because of how different they are. So many things were, can I just say, resolved in book 1, whereas in books 2 and 3 had a lot of carryover plot lines. Now, I want to be clear, I don't think that the latter two books were bad in any way, but I liked them less. It is hard to say why without spoilers, but to give you an idea, a big difference was, as I mentioned, less character tension. By book 2, we kind of knew in what direction our characters were headed, and that meant that all the fine uncertainty of the first book was gone. I was a little sad to see that go. Second, the later books focus more on demons rather than evil humans. And unfortunately, I don't think it works as well. You see, human villains can often have conflicting emotions and motives. We're complicated, we're unpredictable, whereas demons in stories are almost always one-dimensional blobs of evil. The demons have interesting culture and interesting appearances, but not much personality.
Well, that's just mean.
And third was, again, I just wasn't sold on the plotline of the character running from their destiny. It's an interesting idea, but I didn't believe it for a second, so it felt like a time waster. If it had been more convincing and maybe the character had found some legitimate alternatives to explore, yeah, maybe it would have worked better. Still, it's not all bad. I will also say there are some things that worked better in books 2 and 3. For one, the scale of the conflict escalates quite severely, whole nations get involved, and the hints of magic that we see in the early books become full displays that are pushed to its limits in the later ones. Many of the mysteries around the demons and the Vaere were explored, and character arcs will continue to their fulfillment. So all of these things can be true at once. There were some things I liked less and some things I liked better. I still think the first one was my favorite, but to be clear again, books 2 and 3 were certainly not bad. So these books were written in the 80s, and so they don't really have like modern levels of diversity. But that said, there are two very prominent women in the story, Tayan and Pythagoras, and they're extremely nuanced characters. I also like the fact that one woman was a hero and another was kind of a villain, and it includes some diversity within the gender. That said, it is still very much a male-dominated story, which is fine, by the way. You know, women authors don't owe us to compensate. But I also really appreciated that the character Jarek is very much disabled. He's weak and he gets sick all the time, and we see people mock him for it. Plus, as his journey continues, things change and maybe even improve, but he remains ultimately frail in body. He isn't magically cured, and I actually thought that plotline was really well handled. As for the content warning, this is not an especially dark story at all, but there are some mature themes that it tackles, like the loss of a parent, and the guilt of feeling responsible. There are some depictions of slavery, and there's a uniquely abusive relationship between a mentor and mentee that has a lot of manipulation. The later two books do have a lot more battle violence, but it's still nothing too graphic. And there are 2 brief sex scenes in the trilogy, but they are mostly skimmed over. Now, is the ending worth it? Yes. I know I criticized the later 2 books today, but overall I was still very impressed by the strong emotional resonance at the ending. The plot lines and the characters all did come together very well. My only complaint was that particular sci-fi angle I mentioned earlier could have been explored more. But that was the one thing that I was left wanting more of. Everything else was wrapped up quite nicely for me. And how much should you try? Look, I'd recommend trying at least the first book. It is the strongest of the 3, in my opinion. And if you get to the end of the first one and you're really not loving it, then you've given it your best shot. So, good luck and happy reading. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the Cycle of Fire below. Did I convince you to read it? I'd be happy to hear. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more book reviews like this one. You can support the channel by buying my own books, The Immortal Investigations, or checking out my online shop or my Patreon. Otherwise, I will see you again very soon. I hope you enjoy a good book today. Bye.